Time for another demo. So today I want to look at an issue I think a lot of us are going to have as we're working through our backgrounds, and especially as we head into our final project, which is that you want this beautiful washy background, but maybe you have a figure or a chair or a table in front of it. So there are two ways you can do this. Obviously, you can paint around it, which is what I'm going to do here. But there are some tricks to keeping things still feeling washy, like pre-wetting your paper like I just did, so that you can apply a wash that's still going to be pretty smooth across the whole thing. So it doesn't seem choppy because you're painting around something. Or you can use Frisket, masking tape, any number of things to keep that figure light, or if you're going to go a completely different color, which is true in this case. One reason that I like to paint around things is just Frisket takes a long time to dry, and it also entirely seals the area. So at least in this image, which is one of the images you could have done for this project, some of the shadows really pick up a lot of the same colors. So I like to leave my pages open. I don't really use a lot of masking. I tend to just go around things, but it's a really nice tool if what you have is working for that, and that it can really be helpful if you don't have as much control or the background's very, very washy. So if you were doing that, you would put the Frisket down and then let it entirely dry, and then you do the whole background, let that entirely dry, and then pull the Frisket up and paint the figure, tray, table, whatever's in front, So with this, I'm just working up a whole bunch of different layers of kind of different blues to my lightest color, that first bright, vibrant teal that I put down, or turquoise, is now my highlight color. And I'm building darker and more specific. I'm using some of those darker shadow colors to also start bumping in the shadows that are reflected off this wall or from the lighting into this dress, which is a red dress. So now that's dried, I do want to go through with some pencil and add some of my details back in. Some of the washes kind of erased my line work, and this is going to help me as I work through it to keep them straight. Often when I freehand, my hand curves. You'll see as I'm keep adjusting these lines. So now that that's dry, we're going to start slowly building up our saturation. Got a nice deep navy blue tone here. A touch of black and a little bit of the turquoise so it blends into the background. So the boards on the background of this image are super weathered. They've got peeling, chippy paint. So we're going to add some of the contrast shadows that would give us that effect. Also use that same color to kind of darken my lines, add shadows in where the boards, in between the boards, darken behind my person here. I'm also keeping an eye on light, so that bottom corner, you can tell there must be a light coming from our right-hand side, kind of bouncing off the floor perhaps, that's made the bottom of this wall paler, both on this side of the skirt and on the other side a little tapering off. So keeping that in mind as I add these darker shadows that I don't get too far into that area. I'm working on top of the very suede-y, I think it's Stonehenge printmaking paper. Has a little bit of a yellow cast, so you'll see, especially when it's wet, it kind of brings yellow into my blues and looks a little greener, but as it dries, it loses that. This paper also really doesn't like Frisket. It's got a little bit too much texture to it, so it's another reason I didn't choose to use it. But you can see that by working pretty wet in the paper, holding moisture, even as I'm painting, it is keeping things from looking too choppy and trying to work on big layers. So it's going all the way across with one color and then going all the way across with another, so that you don't finish one side and then have to mimic and remix all those colors to do the other side. So my paper is drying out a little bit, which is letting me get some of these finer line works and details in to illustrate the chipping and cracking of the boards. I'm going to take that darker color and also deepen some of my shadows on the dress here. I'm not going to worry too much about painting the dress. There are other demos for that, but I want you to be able to sort of see the layering. So I let everything dry again. You can see that a lot of those darker shadows actually dried down to be paler. Yay, watercolor. So another pass to deepen some shadows, add more specificity, especially now that it's dry, we have an opportunity for some finer line points. I'm using my round brush because if I push hard, I can get nice, like flat, almost dry brushy textures. And if I use just the point, I can get nice line work textures. Always moving the brush in the direction of the boards, trying not to go across them now that I'm doing these detail works. If you think about how a board chips or paint chips on a board, it's always, not always, going to almost always follow the grain. So I've taken a red, and now that the blue and undertones are dry in this, I can just sort of apply the local color over all these shadows. I added a few touches of yellow, so a couple highlight areas will be a little orangier. And then taking a deeper red that's like a pinkier color and putting that over my blue shadows to once again sort of just start to marry them with the red color of the dress. You would think that teal would be such a dark and very odd shadow color, but when it's applied underneath the red, kind of mixes together in a nice way. So the floor is more like a concrete floor. It's got some wear and tear. It's very mottled with different lights hitting it from different directions, applying color to it. So we want to make sure that that effect is there. There's a little bit of red bounced up from the wall from the floor onto the wall. When you have multiple light sources, you're going to have multiple shadows and highlights also. Nice to have a reference image for that. Blow dry it so that that floor gets dry again. I did a little bit of salt and pickup and blow dried it again just to add a little more texture to that area. And I'm doing some speckling. So it's pretty wet right now, but going through with the paintbrush and a black spatter on the bottom, I put my rag on top of the dress to keep the spatter from being on that. But since the paper is wet, the spatter's not so stark. It sort of does that diffused, soft look. Taking a white colored pencil and adding just a little bit of texture and highlight anywhere that I did the cracked wood appearance so that the contrast is bumped up. And also a pencil and adding in a few more areas of texture on the boards. And now I'm doing spatter onto dry to really bump up the texture on the floor. Had a few big drips there, but conveniently they land in places I'm adding the drop shadow anyway. And that pretty much is how to do that. So just remember to work from your dark colors to your light colors to your dark colors, and plan your paintings ahead so that you leave things where you need them. All right.